Good evening, Georgetown. My name is Carol Jacobs, and I'm the Superintendent of Schools. And this evening I have with me Terry Wiggin, who is our Director of Finance and Operations. Our goal tonight is to provide information on the school budget override, and we've chosen to make this a call-in show, so we hope that you'll participate. The number is on your screen, 978-352-5745, and you can also email your questions to Wiggin, W-I-G-G-I-N .terry@yahoo.com. So we're going to begin this evening providing some basic information. We're going to answer, I believe, 5 questions. But before I start, I want to just let you know you can find additional information regarding the school's proposed override by going to our website at www.georgetown.k12.ma.us. There's a Superintendent's Corner budget page and a document center, and so anything Terry and I are going to talk about can be found at that document center. For those of you who like to see a more live presentation, that's why we're choosing this format tonight. So I'm going to get started. Remember, you can call in at any time. The phones are being manned, or you can email. The first thing we'd like to talk about is answer the question, what is in the override? And there are 4 areas that we are trying to address in this proposed school override. The first deals with instructional programs and services. The other deals with buildings and grounds. Another deals with an impact to technology, and the last deals with an impact to co-curricular and transportation. The reason we've chosen these areas are that these are the areas that both the school administration, the staff, and the community have identified as areas that really need to be addressed in an override. We also know that an override is not going to be successful if it isn't very clear as to what is being proposed and why it is important. So the first area on our slideshow is what is in the override that impacts instruction. There are a number of positions in this override that impact instruction. Some of those positions are positions that currently exist in the budget, and others are positions we propose to either restore or add to address the priorities that have been identified. Listed, I don't see it on your screen, but I'm sure it will come up shortly. The list of positions are there. In terms of what's already, there it is, in terms of what's already in the override request that we have in the programs and services right now are a 1.0 art teacher at the middle high school. We have a business teacher that we are proposing to put into the override. Without the business teacher, it will impact our programs in terms of our graduation requirements. In terms of the art teacher, we would be eliminating our graphic arts program at the middle high school. We also have special ed programs that we have begun to add. There is a proposed, there are 1.5 teachers proposed in the override. This will allow us to provide all of the programs and services that we have built and what we continue to need for our students. You may have heard us talk about in previous sessions with the school committee the importance of having these programs in-house because one of the things we're trying to do along with increasing the programs and services for our students, it is also to manage the costs of special education, particularly those costs when we send children outside of the district to out-of-district programs. This year we were successful in creating these programs and actually bringing back a few students into the district, saving the district money, but most importantly providing an opportunity for those students to be educated in the town in which they live and where their peers are and their parents pay taxes. We have also, electives at the high school are something that we have put into this budget, largely because one of the things we're fighting with our potential loss of programs is putting students in study halls to the extent that at least every middle school student would have 1 study hall and maybe 2 per day. The problem with that is that it does not count toward the state's time on learning, so we're trying to mitigate that. We're also making sure that our core programs are solid, so there are core 2.6 core subject area teachers. We are also proposing to add a math specialist. Our math results in the district are something that we've been trying very hard to improve, particularly at the elementary schools. And so having this math specialist will allow us to provide additional intervention for students who need the greatest amount of help, as well as to work with the teachers on an ongoing basis with their math teaching. In terms of continuing on to the next slide, there are a number of positions that we've listed here. Again, the Pembroke Literacy Coach. Many people have asked us, what does the literacy coach do? Again, that's one of our initiatives has been really impacting positively on our literacy program, and the literacy coach is again providing ongoing support at the school level, assisting teachers with really trying to accelerate both those students who need additional challenge as well as students who need additional help. The library assistance, one of the things that's possible if the override does not pass is that our elementary libraries will not be staffed, and so therefore we'll have to rely on parent volunteers and or not have them open. In terms of the exploratory program, in terms of middle school, right now the 7th grade students have an opportunity to explore foreign languages. That program would not exist without this override, so we've put it in. And then the .2 math, science, English, social studies, and art teachers at the middle school would allow us to keep our class sizes below 27 students in the core academic areas. The override also has impact to buildings and grounds. One of the things that's been difficult with our level of staffing over the last 3 years, while we've protected core programs for students, one of the things that's been a casualty of this is we've been reducing things that have to do with non-instructional programs. That has resulted in our buildings and grounds not being maintained to the level that they need to be maintained. Certainly nothing we're happy about or proud of, but when we're trying to protect core instructional programs, those were unfortunately choices that needed to be made. So in this override, we have included a line for contracted services, which would allow us to do a better job of bringing in groups of individuals to come and really help maintain our buildings. We would also replace some custodial and grounds equipment. Our equipment is antiquated, some cases cannot be repaired, and therefore our custodians are really using equipment that is not satisfactory to their needs of their job. So we would be replacing some of that, not all of it, but some of that core custodial maintenance equipment. And then one of the things that was mentioned in the accreditation report from the NEAS group when they came was they were concerned about the high school level of staffing for custodians. So what we would propose in the override is to add one full-time custodial position at the middle high school. That would allow us to be much closer to industry standards and would allow us to address one of the core concerns of the accreditation group. And then this year in the budget, one of the things we tried was we cut a custodian at the Pearly School, have one custodian going between Pearly and Pembroke. It's been very difficult. It's actually not working out, largely because our buildings are used by the public every evening almost, and it's just not a sufficient level of support. So we would be putting the .5 Pearly custodian back into the override budget. In terms of technology, our schools need a lot of help with technology, and actually this override doesn't even begin to address the technology needs of the district. In fact, it only tries to address a couple of core things at the middle high school. Again, that was one of the findings in the accreditation report when the team came in 2006. They said that the school's technology was outdated. They also said that it was not 21st century. And so one of the things that we're doing in this override proposal is we're replacing the high school graphic arts lab. Obviously, if the override passes and the art teacher's position is restored, then that art teacher would need to have a sufficient lab with which to teach the graphic arts. Right now, our lab is so outdated that it can't run the current software. In terms of one of the things that we would propose to do it in one of our electives, because it is a 21st century skill and because it is a tested skill for 8th graders, we would continue to bring back some of our industrial technology. Some people might know it as SHOP, However, what we're doing is we're not bringing back necessarily the woodworking part of it. We're bringing back the architectural and engineering part of it, which again, 21st century skills. Therefore, we would need to replace the CAD lab, which is how we would run that. Right now, again, that it's not sufficient to run the current program. And then in terms of co-curricular and transportation, without the override, the school department will need to implement bus fees. Those fees have never been charged before, but they would need to be charged, and some of that money that we would raise would be used to pay for the 5th bus. In terms of reducing athletic fees by $125 per student, I think what's important here is we compare ourselves to other towns in the entire state. In fact, the school committee receives a monthly report on this from a gentleman down near the Cape who does this for the entire state. And we already have, we're already in the top 5 in terms of the highest fees in the state, with $450 for high school sports, $370 for middle school sports, and some high school sports. Those fees are due to go up to $505 for middle school and $585 with no family cap. Currently, there is the $1,500 family cap. So this override, what's happening is, number one, it's getting to be to the point where it's impacting the number of children who can actually participate in co-curricular activities. I can only say for myself, when I went to school, I had, the opportunity to play 3 sports. I'm one of 5 children. All of my brothers and sisters played sports. It would have been a huge burden for my family to be able to have afforded this, and it is a huge burden. The current fees are a huge burden for many of our families. We have gone from 600 students participating in sports to 520 students participating in sports. And a number of families have said that their children are required to play only 1 sport because that's what they can afford. The goal in the override is to impact that by reducing it to what is around now the average in the state, which is around $300 a student. The other thing is activity fees. Right now at the middle high school, students pay a one-time $50 activity fee, whether they participate in 1 club or 10 clubs. Next year, the funding for that will be dependent on how many students are able to be interested in a club, and they will have to take the cost of the club and divide it by the number of students, and that will be the user fee for that particular club. Personally, I think that one of the advantages of free and appropriate public high schools is that children have the opportunity to explore a variety of ways that they can, be part of decision making in their world, and can have an opportunity to explore all kinds of interesting initiatives that maybe they might like to pursue further, in their life and in their career. So the idea of having self-sufficient activity fees, again, we expect that will result in a serious decline in the number of opportunities that are available. Both the athletic fees and the athletic fees are of a concern to the NEASC, to the accreditation, because they see co-curricular activities as a part of the core academic program. And they have let us know that they have some concerns about the proposed increases. So now Terry's going to talk about why is it a $1.2 million override, and why is that is the number that's being proposed.
Thank you, excuse me. Thank you, Carol. One of the things the school committee did before really deciding on what would be included in the override, which Carol just went through, and what that override would look like, is they established a criteria that they felt should guide them in their decisions. And the first piece of their criteria was that they wanted to maintain the current level of accreditation and not have the accreditation at the middle high school be downgraded to probation. Many of the instructional items that you just had Carol list for you address that part of the criteria. She also mentioned the idea that potentially we were looking at having students in study halls and not meeting time on learning standards. And so a second piece of the criteria was to meet those time on learning regulations and to reduce or hopefully eliminate study halls due to the cuts that we have seen and would continue to see in electives if an override isn't approved. Again, the instructional items you saw listed address that concern. A third criteria was to maintain